Lesson 1 of our new unit is about the opposite quantities, and when I combine them, I'm going to make 0. Your objective: today I will demonstrate my mathematical ability to explain the opposite of a number. It is called the additive inverse because the sum of two numbers is 0 through class discussion. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how this is what we're going to be looking at. Okay, we're going to be looking at positive and negative numbers, but let's go ahead and review and see what we know about negative numbers. Negative numbers, first of all, let's look at those. They are to the left of 0 on a number line, and they get smaller going to the left. So the further left on the number line, the smaller the number. Okay? They can mean a loss, a drop, a decrease, or something that is below sea level. Those are some key words to be looking at when we're talking about a negative number. A loss, a drop, a decrease, or below sea level. They look like -7 or -8, where -8 is the smallest number. Okay? They're also the opposite of positive numbers. So if they're the opposite of positive numbers, well, let's see what positive numbers are. Positive numbers are to the right of 0 on the number line, and they get larger going to the right. Okay? Which is the exact opposite of the negative numbers. And some words that we can use when we talk about positive numbers, they can mean a gain, an increase, or above sea level. Okay? They don't have to have a sign. Unlike the negative numbers where we have to write the negative with them, I don't always have to write the positive symbol with the numbers, because if it's not written, it is understood that it is positive. Okay? And there again, they're the opposite of negative numbers. Well, we're on a Venn diagram, and so there has to be something in common with these numbers. Well, what is in common with both positive and negative numbers? Okay, well, both of these numbers lie on a number line. I can draw out a number line, and I can use that for both positive and negative numbers. Okay, let's go ahead and see some examples. Okay, so I have up here the additive inverse. I have a number line, and I have some questions. Well, let's go ahead and go through the questions first, and then we'll talk about this whole additive inverse business. Okay? Well, as asking first of how far is 7 from 0 and in which direction? So I have 7. Okay, if I put a dot right above the number line, and 0. Well, if I go this way, okay, to 7, how far did I go? I had to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 from 0, it is 7 spaces. Okay, and in which direction did I go? Well, this was positive, so it told me I had to go to the right. Now, what is the opposite of 7? Well, this is a positive 7, so the opposite would be a -7. Okay, now I want to know how far is -7 from 0 and in which direction. Well, -7 is still 7 spaces. Which way did I have to go? I had to go to the left. All right, now the added inverse needs to go in your toolbox. Okay, I didn't write it in there because I want to see how many people are actually listening to the video. And if it's in the toolbox, because I will be grading this on your notes, that make sure that this word is in your toolbox. Okay? But the additive inverse is simply what I'm adding the opposite, because additive means to add. Okay, let's erase that so I can get it a little clearer. We'll write in a color we can see that pops out the screen a little bit. Okay, so it's simply I'm going to add the opposite. Because the inverse, if I invert something, I flip it, or I'm looking at the opposite. So we're looking at the additive inverse, or add the opposite. Okay? So how did this work? Well, I had 7, right? The additive inverse of 7 is -7. Basically, when I when I take 7 plus a negative 7, that is going to equal 0. And this is the property of the additive inverse. A number plus its opposite will equal 0. So if I want to get something to equal 0, all I have to do is simply add the opposite, right? Okay, now let's see. I think I have this written out just a little bit different for you. Okay, well, here is one of the official definitions of the additive inverse. And it says that for all numbers A is just simply a variable, a placeholder, there is a negative A. Okay, there is the opposite of that, such that A plus the opposite, a positive plus a negative, equals 0. Okay, this is all the additive inverse is. So when I talk about the additive inverse, all I'm talking about is a number plus its opposite, and that's going to equal 0. We're always concerned with how does all this stuff work in the real world? Well, we use positive and negative numbers all the time in the real world. Well, how do we do that? Well, if I look at, say, the number 10, okay? Remember at the very beginning when we were doing the Venn diagram, and I gave you some different words that we could use for negative. Well, that's all I did here. I said negative 10 could mean that we're 10 degrees below 0. Now, in western Kansas and Liberal, we're probably not ever, well, I take that back. We could get to 10 degrees below 0, which would be a negative 10, which is pretty darn cold, okay? And we have had some really cold days where it has been below 0. Anytime we're below, we're talking about a negative number because 0 on a number line is 0, right? Below would be going to the left, especially if I wrote my number line vertical. Okay, if I wrote my number line like this and I had 0 here like it is on a thermometer, if I go below, this is where all my negative numbers are. Okay, another example, I have 200 plus a negative 200. Well, we know because of the additive inverse that equals 0. All right, so let's see how that problem worked. I said Daniel earned $200 last week. Okay, he worked really, really hard. He spent on a new video game console. Not that any video game console in today's world is $200, but for example, it is. So how much money does he have left? Well, I have 200 plus negative 200. How do I know it's a negative 200? He said he spent it. If I look at what am I talking about, I talked about last week Daniel earned $200. Well, when I earn $200 and I spend it, then I have nothing left. Because of the added inverse, I add the number plus the opposite, it equals 0. So he actually has $0 left. All right? I believe this is the last slide, so you need to make sure this lesson was pretty short, pretty easy. The only thing we really talked about was the added inverse, okay, and what that is. So, and the difference between positive and negative numbers. So I need everyone to make sure you write your WSQ. Okay, it is attached, and I need you to bring your questions to class. This first part will be fairly easy for everyone because it should be a review. Now, I will see everyone in class, and have a great night.